Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 3 of Ben's Learning Lounge. So great to have you back here again. Wow, episode 3. To think we made it so far already. I want to thank everyone for getting us to 150 likes on Facebook. I now have an Insta page at Ben's Learning Lounge if you want to give it a follow. I kept it nice and simple there. And just a reminder too that this whole podcast is a fundraiser for Mind. Mind is a charity all about mental health, which I think is very important during this time of quarantine where people might be separated from friends or family. If you want to give to them, you just want to go to justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. That's justgiving.com/fundraising/Ben's Learning Lounge. And now to talk a little bit about our guest, Rebekah Stevenson. She's going to be talking to us all about sustainability. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about how to be sustainable, how to keep motivated with all the bad news about sustainability going around, and what exactly you can do at home now to perhaps make steps to be a little bit more sustainable in your actions. Rebekah herself helped arrange the UK's first LAKEY, which is the local conference of youth, which we'll talk a bit more about later. She plays an active community role within its parent organisation UKYCC, the UK Youth Climate Coalition. She's currently an environmental engagement officer for a local government, and she also recently finished her bachelor's in geography and took a big range of sustainability modules. Now, she is by far the most sustainable person I know, teaching me all about upcycling, about the benefits of charity shopping, about plastic alternatives, and all sorts of facts to do with sustainability, which are brilliant motivators for me, and I think it's great if you hear them from her yourself. Now, just a quick disclaimer that none of Rebekah's opinions in this podcast are representative of any organisation she has worked for or been a part of. It's all just completely Rebekah that you'll be hearing. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Rebekah. Hello there and welcome back to the podcast. I am now here with Rebekah Stevenson. Thank you for being part of the podcast, Rebekah.
You're welcome.
So, we're going to talk a little bit about sustainability today. And I say a little bit because there's only really so much we can fit in the period of time that we have, as we may have learned before. So the first question I have for you, Rebekah, is what actually is sustainability? What are we talking about here?
I think sustainability is a huge, huge topic, as you just said. Obviously, it's linked to climate change in some ways. I think most people probably think about the environmental side of sustainability, protecting the environment and everything. But there's also lots of social, economic, and sort of personal sustainability goals that I think are really important as well. It's meeting the needs of the present whilst providing for the future still. So a nice way to think of it is borrowing stuff from your grandkids.
Yeah. I've definitely borrowed stuff from my grandparents before though too. Right, I see. So it's not just about the climate aspect of it. So do you have any examples of things that aren't, to do with the climate that are also in the sort of sustainability banner?
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you asked that because I have a perfect example. Charity shopping, I would say, is a really, really good example as a one aspect thing to show a few different ways that it is sustainable. Obviously, you've got the environmental impacts of it. You're reducing clothing waste for a start. There's so much that goes to landfill. You're kind of reducing that environmental impact. And then it's got a social sustainability, because by not buying fast fashion, you're minimizing the amount of women, the gender inequality around sweatshops and everything that goes around that. And then it's also economically sustainable, one, because it's so much cheaper than any sort of high street shop for most of the time. And if you're shopping something like vintage rather than charity shops, you're also supporting a lot more businesses. So that's a lot more locally, environmentally and economically sustainable.
Right, I see. So, I mean, it's funny because a lot of these things do overlap with each other. Like you said, there's sort of the environmental aspects and there's the business aspects, and they all kind of, there's no it's difficult to isolate one singular thing. And I noticed that too when I've looked before at the UN Sustainable Development Goals, trying to understand, how the UN kind of classifies sustainability, and it has some really interesting goals. Like I see, for example, as a sustainable development goal, one of them is no poverty, another one is zero hunger, another one's gender equality. I mean, they do have things like climate action, clean energy, that type of stuff, but it's definitely sort of encompasses a lot more than I previously thought it did.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised by that. is so linked towards everything. You can't really solve one problem without either highlighting or needing to solve another. I guess that's just the nature of the world.
Yeah, there's a lot of different sort of buzzwords too in sustainability, and I am kind of testing your knowledge as well as my knowledge, because I want to break a couple of things down. I mean, I did a couple of modules in sustainability, so I'm not luckily I'm not completely deaf and dumb to the ideas, but I think it's worth bringing some stuff up, because I think now in today's climate, people talk a lot about sustainability, but I think these kind of words can be thrown around without people knowing what it means. And you kind of fall into the aspect of like greenwashing and things, right? When people can use a word, you're not too sure what actually it's talking about. So could you give any kind of idea of what the circular economy is? Because I know that's something which is brought up a lot.
Oh, so I'm not an expert in economics or anything, but my understanding of it is, instead of the sort of a consume, use, and get rid of, like linear consumption that we have at the minute from a lot of, I don't know, tech or just general consumption, it's consume, use, throw away. But the circular economy style, through my understanding, is you buy it, you use it, and there's either a way to reuse it or recycle it to kind of link back. So instead of having that linear progression, you have like a circle that loops back to consumption again.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so you're not getting stuck on that necessary bit of production, which is sort of the beginning stage, right? Where you produce stuff in the first place. You kind of, I suppose you rely on that less, right? If you're going through like a circular economy.
Yeah, and I think I think a lot of it is limiting the waste that comes out of the system of consumption, rather than still needing to produce loads, but it just going in a circle. It kind of reduces all those different outputs.
Yeah, I see. And that kind of brings me to the next sort of definition I think we should tackle is upcycling. So that's something which I think is linked to reusing, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I love upcycling and reusing things. It's something I could talk about for hours. But yeah, I'd say upcycling is kind of transforming one thing that maybe doesn't serve its purpose anymore to another thing. You know, it's quite easy to upcycle clothes and things like, you know, change something that doesn't fit into something that does fit, you know, if you lose weight or something. Or it could be, I don't know, finding a new purpose for something. Ben was saying to me a while ago, he had flower pots that he was going to then change into storage things instead of an unused flower pot.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So, and I've seen a lot of these type of things. I think I see them a lot. At least I did when I used it on Pinterest. There was definitely a lot of those kind of examples of managing to reuse things in that kind of upcycling fashion. But would it count, do you think, if I took like, I see girls do this sometimes, and I know that it's something that you can do. Like you can take jeans, right? Maybe that belong to like your dad or something, and then you kind of like can cut them down. Is that an element of upcycling if you turn them into shorts?
Yeah. I've literally done that to my brothers before. I put a couple buttons in the back.
I actually didn't even know that.
Yeah. I just cut them shorter. They were like very, very trendy skateboardery ones. Cut them short, put some buttons in the back to nip the waist in a bit. But yeah, like upcycling stuff is way more than just clothes. But that's just kind of a lot of the things that I do currently anyway. It's just fun. I'd give it a go.
Another area which I did want to talk about too was greenwashing, because that's sort of another floaty word. I'm not sure if everyone fully understands what that means. So from my understanding, at least, greenwashing is the idea of, and you know, sort of help me on the lines if you think I might have something out of whack, Rebekah, but I think it's the idea of persuading someone perhaps to buy something, especially in like a marketing way, by sort of portraying the characteristics of the service or object as being very good, maybe for the environment, or perhaps being something more sustainable than it is. You know, maybe they try and sell it as being, you know, a bio product or a natural product, or, you know, those kind of words that kind of are all a bit floaty, you know, not easy to define, and maybe put their products under that kind of branch so they sound a little bit more friendly to the green world than they otherwise are.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so annoying. It's one of those things that really, really irks me in sort of like the sustainability thing, because it's just so easy to, there was a razor, I can't remember what company it was once that I saw, but they did a green version of their razors, like
Oh,
the
what?
color green.
Okay.
And the way that they presented it with leaves around and stuff literally made it look,
Oh, is it just the
reusable
same
or something, but it's
type of
not.
razor, but just green?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
terrible.
I'm not gonna say which one I think it is, because I think I'll be wrong. But just little things like that. But that actually, it reminds me of I had a reusable coffee cup for ages. Like the bamboo ones.
Yes, I've seen those.
Um, yeah, and they're always billed as quite a eco product. A lot of people have them, and it does help reduce the amount of single-use cups and stuff you use. They are amazing. I used them. I used it for years until it broke. Um, but I recently learned. So it's made from sort of chips of bamboo with a silicone cup top, but the actual bamboo granules are all held together with a couple of different chemicals and a formaldehyde sort of mixture, and that kind of glues it all together. But those chemicals can leak into the cup,
Oh,
and it's just tiny little things like that, like on the
yeah,
surface.
yeah.
And even if you dive a little bit deeper, it is a sustainable option.
Yeah.
However, it has all these other issues with it.
Well, I have a couple of good examples as well to jump onto that
Mm,
too. Again, I don't know the exact
mm.
amount, not expert in the field. I think I might put it in the little description or maybe tell people to look at it. But for example, using a flask, right? It's a good option instead of reusing cups all the time. It's something which I
Yeah,
try and do
without a
more
doubt.
often now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you have a flask, you have to really make sure that you use that flask, because the amount of times you have to use that flask for it to be worth it for the environment, you can't really
Hmm.
be throwing it away after 1 year, because you're not going to get the full, well, you likely in 1 year won't get the full usage out of it. So you have to really, I really think I got told it was something silly like 1,000 times to actually make it
Yeah, it's
worth
like a
it.
crazy, crazy amount. I think
Yeah,
when I was using my bamboo cup, I think I'd actually worked out that I had used it because I was using it multiple times a day to go to lectures and things like that. But you really, really need to actually use things. It's not worth
yeah,
kind of occasionally using them. It just doesn't make sense.
exactly. But I think that links to the greenwashing, because there are flasks which say, that it's a more sustainable option, but it doesn't say
Mm,
it's a more sustainable option if you use it about 1,000 times.
yeah.
Another good example I have too, which I actually wrote about. I did a few blog posts a couple of years ago to do with sustainability. And one of the things which I found
Mm.
really interesting that I researched was there's a Ben and Jerry's ice cream. You might have heard it. I don't know if you've had it before. It's called Chunky Monkey. Um,
I can't say I have. I did not like how it sounded.
I promise it's actually really delicious, but I've only ever had that one, and there's like a polar bear one as well. But anyway, this is not what this is about. All right, this is about the fact that on Ben and Jerry's in the US, they put above the Chunky Monkey ice cream the word natural. They put all natural above it. They had in brackets all natural range, and the issue is, and the all natural kind of means if the food doesn't contain any added color, any artificial flavors or synthetic substances. But
Hmm.
when Ben and Jerry's claimed that it was all natural, it had like this factory made like fake vanilla in there, something called alkalized cocoa, which is alkalized, corn syrup, and partially hydrogenated soybean oil. So the whole
Oh.
thing really isn't natural, but they managed to work around the definition of how the US Food and Drug Administration call natural to
Mm.
make it sound natural and legally get away with it. Yeah, they ended up getting a court case,
So
which
annoying.
was separately done by the Center for Science in the Public Interest, and they ended up getting done for it, and they had to drop the all natural. But it's just to say to people that even if something says all natural or bio or organic or even just straight out says good for the environment, you really have to triple check that what you're getting is that, and it's not just a normal product with a higher price.
Yeah, like I'm a massive advocate for like everyone needs to do their own research. Don't just go off what one person says. But it just gives such a bad image for any sort of environmental option. When you hear about all of these options that we're saying, and you don't be turned off the whole sustainability movement just because these few brands think it's okay. Just, it's not. You picked one thing that annoys me.
Yeah, the reason why it bothers me too is obviously I did my degree in marketing, and that's something which
you're the problem.
I am the problem. We got taught about greenwashing, but don't get the wrong idea. It's not like we're all getting brainwashed to say, look, here's how you greenwash a customer if you want to do it. We spoke about we spoke about unethical bits of marketing and how to avoid it or how to spot it. Because I think some people can actually think that they're doing the right thing and they're not. But I'm very much about ethical marketing. And that's why it's something which is very much brought to my attention, because I see it everywhere. And like you said, I think it's a shame, really. It does a bit of a disservice to the idea of sustainability, because, there are a lot of people who want to take it seriously. And I'm sure that they feel a little bit like they're being made a mockery of by some of these, companies that are, at the end of the day, are just doing it for a profit.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to ask you, Rebekah, a little bit about sort of the impact that we have. I mean, it can be a little bit demotivating sometimes when we see maybe on the news and type things, that, there's oceans filling up with bloody plastics, that, there's trees being cut down in areas, animals are dying. How do you manage in your line of work to sort of keep a positive mindset and, do what you can without getting too demotivated?
It's so hard. I don't think you could ever speak to an environmentalist who says like, oh, it's so easy to be 100% positive about the work you're doing. Because even the smallest thing doesn't feel like it's doing a lot sometimes. If you're something like climate change isn't going to be solved overnight. The Amazon's not going to instantly regrow. The oceans won't suddenly stop acidifying. It's not going to happen overnight. Some things might not even happen in my lifetime. So it's so hard to find the motivation sometimes to commit to doing some of this work when you can't always see it happening. But yeah, I think sometimes you just need a bit of blind optimism. I believe that the work that I do could help inspire someone else who could help inspire someone else. And that whole chain reaction to eventually make things better. I think sometimes you just need that blind optimism, but in terms of sort of personal, mental, sustainability to reduce burnout and things like that. I know you're a massive reader into burnout and things like that, but yeah, I think it's so easy in the environmental sector to get overwhelmed. So I think sometimes we just need a bit of a break, and you just need to give yourself that time, meditate, kind of get out of whatever's going on in the news, and then get back on with your work.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think too what you brought up as well is that you sort of have to have that optimism that people will almost carry the torch after you've done it, because you can't always see the direct progress of your results, and you kind of rely on the next people to take it forward to improve things a little bit better. And it does remind me that ancient Greek proverb that you might have heard before that says a society grows great when, I think it was like, old people or old men plant trees in whose shade they know that it shall never sit in.
Ooh.
I think that reminds me a little bit though about what people in sustainability are often doing, because you can't always see the direct result of what you're doing, but you are doing a lot, and you have to just know that as time passes, those little things that everyone is doing or accomplishing will grow to something much, much bigger than themselves.
Yeah, like I'm not very old. I'm only 22 at the minute, but I'm already getting to see the benefit of young people. I am technically still a young person, but people younger than me being so passionate about the environment. At the conference that I helped grow, we had so many young people there. Some of the people from my old college that I got to talk to, who were just so passionate and so eloquent and proud of their activism. And it's truly inspiring seeing the drive that young people have. It's the way forward, and even doing small things has a huge impact. Our sort of tagline, I think, was think global, act local, or the other way around. So it's kind of showing that small actions can build up to the bigger thing.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect quote, actually, now that you mention it. And I
think it
think
was that
that,
way round.
yeah, either way, as long as you're doing some local, you're doing some global.
Yeah,
It works out.
bit of both.
I was going to mention too that optimism that you have is great, because some things that I've noticed that you've done as well. I mean, you posted on Instagram, I think last week, some kind of like good statistic about, I think it was like Britain and the coal usage of Britain. Do you
Oh
remember that?
yeah, yeah. It was at the time. It was from the Guardian that the UK was using 0% of its energy was coming from coal sources, which is incredible, and it had been for 20 something days at that point. I think it is due to the coronavirus, sorry, trigger word,
Wow.
that's happening at the minute. But I think at the minute, anyway, I think in the UK, I think 50% of our energy comes from clean sources anyway.
Yeah.
But there's loads of statistics like that people don't always focus on because, there's so many other things going on.
Yeah, people want to obviously focus on where there's problems so then they can try and fix them. But it's sometimes, I
Just
suppose,
easier, yeah.
good to celebrate those victories, especially for people like yourself who work in sustainability. You want to sort of know that there are positive things happening and that the results of your actions can get somewhere, right?
Yeah. It's so encouraging. Like I work for local government at the minute, and I only have a really small role there. I work with volunteers, and they do mainly litter picking, but the work that they do is priceless in the community. It's not some huge protest, it's not writing a book, but just tidying up their local environment and making it better for the life that's around them. Priceless. It's absolutely priceless. Yeah, I think if more people did all these small actions, the world would kind of get healed a bit quicker.
Well, speaking of these actions that you're personally taking in place, I mean, I want to know a little bit more about LAKEY, about what that is, and also any other things that you've been working on. I think you mentioned about something, another thing called UKYCC, I think it was. I'm just kind of interested in those things.
Yeah. To try and explain the two of them fully, you'd need quite a while from me because it's quite hard for me to explain. But UKYCC is the organisation that I'm currently starting off doing a bit of work with. It stands for UK Youth Climate Coalition. Kind of just do environmental projects. I work in the community engagement team, just doing a few little projects at the minute. I don't know if I can really talk about any of them. There's not a lot going on because of coronavirus. They kind of set up LAKEY, which is the local conference of youth. And that happened for the first time in the UK last year now. And it was incredible to be part of. Essentially, a COY, so a conference of youth, happens just before the annual UN climate talks. LAKEYs then happen all over the world to get youth voice input from across the globe. So we set up a conference. It was all about knowledge sharing and sort of empowerment and learning about all these different themes of climate change. The most notable one that we used was climate justice, which is a huge, kind of underrated topic at the minute. It's kind of when we're talking about social sustainability, and it's kind of about the people that are most affected or will be most affected by climate change aren't necessarily the people that are harming the environment the most. So like China and America would be the ones with the biggest power plants, whatever, polluting everything. But a small community in Bangladesh, they're the ones that are going to be flooded. And there's loads of things to do with, credit systems. Countries will buy in other countries allowance on climate, like pollution. I can't quite remember the name off the top of my head, but yeah, the LAKEY that we did was amazing. It's quite a shame that not as many people know about it. I think sometimes because the conference isn't free, because you have to rent the space, you have to have the speakers, provide food or everything. They're not free, so I think sometimes they're not. And this was the first one in the UK. There won't be one this year, I don't think, because the COY's been cancelled, which was set to be in Glasgow, which would have been amazing, but sad news.
There'll be more to follow, though.
There will, but I'm not sure if they'll still be in this country. Feels kind of ironic to use an airplane to travel to a climate change conference.
Yeah, you'd like to think that the climate change conference would therefore give a good amount of information that would make that worth it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I also have a question of people who, as you mentioned, during the quarantine, it's a little bit difficult because things are shut down.
Yeah.
But there might be people who do have an interest in sustainability and never really done much about it, or maybe they've done loads about it. What kind of recommendation would you give, do you think, to those people who want to get involved in sustainability during this time but aren't too sure what to actually get involved with?
Well, I think since we all have kind of all the time in the world at the minute, yes, stay home, stay safe, all of that. But I know that a lot of people are going for walks and things like that around their local area, a lot more than they usually would do. So one of the most important things I would say is look at the environment around you. Even if you're in a huge city, there'll still be tiny moss growing somewhere, or even a tree in a park. Kind of appreciate that nature that exists and remember why you want to be sustainable is huge, because it's so easy to lose focus of that, especially now.
So I'm surely as well that if you did start appreciating the nature as well around you, that'd be a great stepping stone to start perhaps working on a local government level. I mean, you could potentially contact your local representatives, right? If you notice some things that perhaps you notice some things that aren't exactly looking environmentally friendly, for example, or spaces which might look a little bit dark and dodgy that could actually be used in an environmental way, or even, using certain services that are more environmental as well. I mean, trying to think off the top of my head, I mean, there are things like water taps in offices that perhaps that are, able to save water at the same time that you use them. They're the ones that I have when I was working in an office. So I suppose, obviously, that second option isn't so easy to do in quarantine, but that perhaps getting in contact with local representatives is something you could do during this time, I suppose.
Yeah. And like finding out what groups are near you, because say if there's a park that you really love going to, there's more likely than not a friends of a park group who would do like the environmental work and all the planting of things and funding bids for new play areas and things like that. You don't have to take on a massive project by yourself. There's more likely than not huge groups out there already. It's just being able to find them. Sometimes contacting people like myself in local government, like environmental sectors, we can direct people in the right places or help people get involved. The internet is infinite. It's so easy just to find, something that's linked to the area that you're around. Yeah, just by finding those people near you is brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, that's great too, because then we've already got a few things that people can do. They can find people near them that share the same interests, go outside, appreciate nature a little bit, perhaps contact local representatives if you know things that perhaps could be improved. And you can also do upcycling, which you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Well, that's great stuff. Is there anything else that you also wanted to bring up too that you think is important for people to consider when looking at sustainability?
A massive personal thing that I have is I sort of get a lot of imposter syndrome with working in the environmental sort of sector. It always feels like there's someone that knows more or is more deserving of a voice to talk about things. I find it difficult just being like a white middle class woman in the environmental sector, especially when talking about things like climate justice. Kind of feels a bit weird to be able to talk about things, but just because there's someone like Greta out there or someone with a PhD in carbon accounting or something, doesn't mean that the place that you have and the part that you play is invalid. Even recycling is huge and can make a huge impact. I think everyone needs to remember that you can help no matter how small your actions are on what you perceive the scale of sustainability is.
I think that's a great sentiment as well, because there's so much people can do. And I think that in every field, and especially within sustainability, where it's highlighted more, that you can feel intimidated by those figures who obviously are working 10 times harder than you, but it's that ability to not feel demotivated, you know, be confident in your voice. I mean, for example, you today, you came on this podcast, which is perfect. You know, it's not always about being the person who knows everything about the topic to do that. You know, if anything, if it was passion. Just, it's having the passion. And if it was just those people talking, you know, you wouldn't have everyone else's sort of ability to contribute new ideas to the field too. So, you know, I think it's a really positive environment if people can feel confident enough to talk about it, like you do, post stuff on Instagram and things about it, if in whatever topic they're interested in, and just feel confident enough to get their voice out there and do something.
Yeah, because I mean, we're not scary. We're not like if anything, I feel like we're the nicest people out there. We literally just want to hug trees and, you know, dance out in the woods.
I have so many pictures. I think I have 3 pictures of you hugging trees over the years.
That's not even as many times as it's happened. That's just the only times you've caught it. But yeah, like we're nice people. I think if anyone's worried about getting involved or wants to get involved and is cautious, you know, reach out to me for a start. I would love to just chat sustainability for hours. I have done.
Rebekah, you're so sweet. You're so sweet to my listeners.
I don't even know them.
You might know a couple. Who knows?
See, I'm proving my own point.
Yes, you are. Yeah, and there's also the positivity of you. I think is great in it too. I'll leave a little in the podcast description. I'll leave a little contact thing so people can get in contact with you if they need to. But brilliant. I mean, that's great. Thank you very much, Rebekah. You gave people a lot to think about there, I think. I think we've managed to slash as well some of the terms that people didn't know. We've managed to bring up things like obviously sustainable development and greenwashing. Yeah, we did good.
I think we did good. And we did it in half the amount of time.
Yes.
As previously recorded.
Yes. Yeah, we don't talk about that, the forgotten tapes. Yeah, but like Rebekah says too, it is a big topic, so we can only fit so much into this length of time. So we really do urge you to do your own research, find things that you're interested in. You know, personally, I really like looking at social progress, or a website called the Social Progress Imperative that looks at how different countries are progressing on a social level, and the social aspect is also can be part of sustainability too. So just find your little niche and find people who like it too, right?
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, Rebekah, thank you so much. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Again, you're welcome.
If you want to contact Rebekah, again, she might be hugging a tree during the time you contact her. It might take her a while, but she's a lovely person and definitely worth the contact. So thank you again, and talk to you soon. I'm not gonna get a bye.
No, because you were so awkward last time. Did everyone else say bye?
Yeah, they said bye. It's okay.
Bye.
No, it's too late now. You've missed the opportunity. If I put that in post, it's gonna sound weird now.
I didn't realize everyone else had done it.